This is Audible.
Juvenile, Washed Ashore. Written by John Harrington. Narrated by Lance McDonald. Chapter 1. Abandoning Ship. Crash! Bang! Boom! The storm's waves battered this tiny 100-foot sailboat repeatedly until they smashed a huge hole in its stern. With water rushing into the back, it lifted the bow up, where all its 8 sailors were sleeping in the front 2 bunkers. This shaking vessel threw all these 15-year-old teenagers out of their beds and tossed them all around their cabins like they were rag dolls. Everybody, get up, Ed, and run up to the main deck outside. We may be sinking. Michael, the ship's captain, ordered while making sure all his boys hustled. It is very imperative that all we recruits exit in an orderly fashion to avoid mishaps and injuries. Christopher, this most intelligent male recruit, suggested. Come on, Matthew, we all have to leave now! Michael ordered again as Matthew followed as a leader. So, as these stormy waves continued smashing this helpless boat, these 4 girls were also being bounced around while sleeping in their cabin next door. Michael's co-captain, Samantha, took charge of her female recruits. All you girls, get up! We're probably sinking! We have to leave the ship now! Samantha screamed as she made sure her girls followed her command. Yes, perhaps we all shall acknowledge the seriousness of this dreadful situation and evacuate immediately. Isabella, this most intellectual female, opinioned. Grab my hand, Olivia. I will pull you up outside the bedroom door. Abigail promised Olivia as she lifted her to safety. Thank you, Abigail. She commended her as Olivia learned another valuable procedure. They all finally managed to congregate just outside their bedrooms. This vehement storm became much more fierce by showing its evil side. All these people from Honolulu, Hawaii, attempted to climb the stairs leading up to the main deck. They continued to slip and slide while bouncing off just about everything in sight, and received minor bruises and scrapes. All of a sudden, a huge gaping hole appeared in the hull. Matthew slipped on the deck, which was tilted at a 45-degree angle. This unfortunate one then slid feet first towards this portal of certain death. He then panicked so much. Everyone, grab Matthew! He is sliding towards the hole in the boat! If he slips through, he'll most likely drown! Michael shouted to warn everybody. I got him! But he is slipping out of my hands! Olivia yelled as her grip became much looser. Let's start a human chain. But first, we have to sit down because it'll be much safer, Samantha requested. As instructed, they all sat down and embraced each other to try to save their helpless mate. Carelessly, holding onto each other's limbs and body parts, this clumsy lifeline would have to do. With Ethan as the anchor and Abigail sitting in front of him as his support, these most athletic ones were disadvantaged from this watery tug-of-war. Olivia slowly but surely started to lose grip from Matthew's cold, wet, frigid hands. Hold on to me, Olivia! Don't let go! My life is actually in your hands! Matthew begged as he sweated more profusely. Momentarily, Matthew started slipping away. With their hands sliding apart, it came down to their interlocking middle fingers. Holding on for dear life, Matthew knew he would lose grip within a few seconds. Disconnecting, this most novice twosome screamed, No! As Matthew faded into this dark, merciless hole, created by this Pacific Ocean storm, these remaining Honolulans froze in horror and were just shocked that this dreadful occurrence had actually happened. After about a 10-second silence, Michael and Samantha then took charge again. Okay, let's all run upstairs to the main deck and jump into the lifeboat, Michael and Samantha hollered simultaneously as they walked behind the rest of the crew while escorting them up on the deck. This furious superstorm still remained extremely active. As this boat continued to splinter, and with the rain pouring down on everyone, Michael was thinking, How can a tropical storm appear without warning? The weather forecast announced there would be calm weather this entire week. All I wanted to do was take my 9th grade Navy Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps classmates out on a 100-mile cruise for this weekend on my father's late grandfather's sailboat. My dad is gonna get so angry at me, especially for sinking it. Michael then realized he and Samantha had to jump into action. Not having any of their survival training manuals nearby, they both had to remember what they learned from reading those books in their ROTC classroom. Knowing this sinking was a life or death situation, they both recalled their most effective method for getting motivated was to get angry. So they both started acting like Navy company commanders. These two knew they couldn't just give up. They knew they were obligated to save all of their shipmates. They now had to spring into action. While taking charge, everyone on deck was slipping and sliding and then falling down. With the storm's wind howling much louder and its ferocious waves crashing closer, it was next to impossible to hear the commands. So they had to use a lot of hand gestures and finger pointing to communicate. After a lot of fright, frustration, and unpreparedness, they finally untangled the sinking ship's lifeboat's knotted lines, throwing the boat over the starboard. All these Honoluluans were about to jump off the ship's right side. Michael, the girls and I will jump first, Samantha insisted. Oh yes, of course, it should always be ladies first, Michael added. Samantha then ordered her girls to muster up on the port side of the boat, because this left side was the lowest point to the water. Okay, ladies, listen up. When you jump into the water, make sure you all cross your legs so you don't hit something with your crotch and hurt yourselves. Also, cross your arms over your chest area. Samantha strongly advised as she physically went through the motions to specifically explain. Now, it was expected that the girls were very scared and nervous when jumping into this stormy ocean, especially that it was their first time using these methods to protect themselves from injuries. It was now the men's turn to abandon ship. Michael commanded his boys without further ado. Okay, gentlemen, we have to make floating devices. Take off your pants now and zipper them back up. Button them, then tie the bottom ankle areas separately into a knot. When you jump, hold your pants upside down and near your waist so it fills up with air. When you hit the water, keep holding the sides of your pants while laying on your stomach. Your air-filled pants will act as a life preserver by keeping you afloat in the water. Michael talked as he too followed his own instructions to a T. All these boys scrambled as fast as they could to make these primitive life-saving oxygen-filled props. The sailboat shook more violently. These boys had no time to react. The ship broke up more while losing all its cargo. Very fortunately, they were all prepared by holding their pants. But, unfortunately, they slid very hard, then slipped overboard and landed in the water, floating on their air-filled pants. All these 7 sailors were now in the ocean but again reunited. The ship soon broke apart into thousands of pieces. They all took advantage of this benefit by grabbing onto the floating objects as life-saving measures. These were all small parts, but all floated and kept their upper bodies above water. Michael's and Samantha's biggest worry was hypothermia. They instructed them to keep active by kicking their feet and moving around to stay warm. What was left of their ship sank rapidly. Michael suddenly remembered their sinking ship could have deadly consequences. Quick, everyone, swim far away from the ship! It's sinking, it could create a whirlpool which could pull us all down, and then we could drown! Michael warned very frightfully, as he grew concerned. After Michael's dying warning, he swam away as far as possible. Due to the storm's unbearable roars, no one heard his frightful warning. Immediately after the vessel sank and created a funnel, known as a whirlpool, it started to suck down objects from the ship. This great force then pulled everyone closer to this spiral drain. Advancing dangerously closer to this deadly hydrogenous whirl, these brave swimmers struggled to keep their distance. Except for one unfortunate victim. "Michael, tell everyone to rescue Christopher! He won't make it without our help!" Samantha stressed as this helpless aide felt very powerless. Michael mustered everyone up by yelling, waving to, and holding some. Keeping a safe distance, they all tried grabbing Christopher. Michael then ordered them to form a human chain, just like before. With Christopher making many orbits around this rotating water, Ethan had many chances to grasp onto this needy victim. While always holding on to Michael, who was also part of this lifeline, Ethan actually did lock onto Christopher many times, but always lost grip due to his wet, slippery body. Ethan had one more chance to latch onto their friend, but to no avail. Failing again, these brave ones, once again, morbidly witnessed yet another mate descend into an aqueous grave. After a minute of weeping and terrifying, these remaining ones swam far away, resumed their passion for survival. They continued holding onto the floating debris. Olivia then miraculously spotted the dinghy. "Oh, look! There's a lifeboat! Let's all swim to it!" Olivia glowed as to finally see a glimpse of hope. They all tried their best swimming to the craft, some with great difficulty. Panicking so much, they attempted to mount this dinghy all at the same time, but with no luck. The captains were getting mad and ordered discipline. "Everyone, please calm down. Let's get on as rationally as possible. Gentlemen, please allow the ladies to board first," Michael required as he observed his command not being obeyed. Because of this chaos, these disobedient ones were just too nervous to follow orders while thinking, every person for themselves. Soon after they all managed to get in this small lifeboat, the havoc continued. This dinghy then flipped over and drifted away very fast. While everyone else swam fast to their floating devices, Samantha told Olivia to swim to the lifeboat instead. These two stayed next to this dinghy. Not being able to board it, Samantha flipped it over and taught Olivia how to survive. "Okay, Olivia, listen very carefully. Since we couldn't get on this boat, I purposely flipped it over. Make sure it is perfectly tipped on its top so the boat's oxygen cannot escape and water cannot get inside. Now, let's duck our heads underneath the boat and hold onto the top sides of our heads above the waterline so we can breathe from its air pocket and so the boat doesn't drift away from us." Samantha tutored her as Olivia listened to her easy-to-follow instructions. Olivia did exactly what her supervisor asked her to do. Soon after, this female duo flipped the vessel back upright, hopped on, then cuffed her hands to bail the seawater out. Its oars were missing, so they easily found floating broken wooden shipboards for substitutions. After a few minutes of rowing through this dreadful waterway, they finally regathered with their mates, then had a meeting on this tiny 15-foot long boat. "Okay, everyone, listen up. We must continue to keep our composure and to work as a team. We also have to row with the waves. I believe we will find land soon. If my bearings are correct, it should be land ahead," Michael assumed as he continued his positive thinking. Michael is so correct. We all must calm down, think rationally, and work together. Samantha agreed while also acting favorably. All the other members were still panic-stricken and hysterical, of course, while still worried and petrified. With everyone yelling and infuriating, they shouted out their questions all at once. "According to your calculations, Michael, What is our estimated time of arrival to this theoretical land? Isabella inquired, very curiously. Yeah, or is this just one big fantasy to try to calm us down? Olivia snapped angrily. How much more swimming and physical exertion must we all do? I'm sure some of us are getting tired now. Christopher queried, then waited for a response. Well, actually, I am not too tired now, so I can help row much more. But are you sure there is land a little further up? Abigail also wondered, surprisingly, as they all grew much more doubtful. So, after what seemed like hundreds of questions and concerns, this quarrel grew louder and louder. These two leaders became nervous and confused and did not know what to tell them. The silence turned to numbness. They soon felt like they failed in leadership, then almost started to cry out and felt shame, guilt, and embarrassment. Then, suddenly, not quite good news. The lifeboat received a humongous thud. Knocking them all back in the water, they all faced another reality. It was a huge, great white shark. With everyone literally scared to death, this event would definitely become the most frightening and dangerous part of their misadventures. Already huddled closely, Michael again took charge. He knew he had to yell again due to the high decibel rate of this continuous storm. Everybody, gather around. Form a circle, facing out while holding hands. Take deep breaths often while holding your breath most of the time. Remain still and motionless. Use only your feet to kick to stay afloat. Keep looking at the shark while facing it. Do not panic. Do not swim away. We are not part of their food chain. Even though sharks are carnivorous, they usually only consume ocean creatures. Michael hollered as to shout out his biggest commands ever. This fearless leader continued to shout out excellent, elaborate commands while staying remarkably calm. Surely everybody was very impressed. This event should have only lasted a couple of minutes and gone very smoothly without incident, almost like it has been rehearsed many, many times before. But in too many cases, not everything goes as planned. This great white veered a little off course and started menacing its potential victims by sniffing them and opening its mouth for possible samples. Simultaneously, due to its scaly skin being so sharp, it gave some of them nicks, scrapes, and minor cuts. Getting nervous as expected, this group circle started to appear more oval, 1,000 times scarier than any horror movie. This 3D reality became much more terrifying. After circling around its prey a couple more times, Olivia always thought the shark was only eyeing her. So on an impulse, she freaked out and then started swimming away extremely frantically, while screaming, of course. No! Olivia! Stop! It'll attack you! Stop now! Samantha pleaded, but to no avail. Not heeding to her commander's warnings, the aquatic beast swam up to her. This instinctual creature had no problem clamping its massive jaw on her hair and submerging her below the waterline. Breaking rank, all of Olivia's friends raced to the area. Not wanting to lose a third classmate, they all quickly, unconsciously dove under, trying to locate her. A few seconds later, this sea monster ejected itself back out of the water. Soaring quite a few feet above the waterline, with Olivia's hair still in its mouth, they both crashed back onto the surface. Samantha then knew exactly how to take charge. Everyone, punch and kick the shark in its gills, nose, and especially in the eyes. It should then release her. Samantha screeched while hoping for Olivia's release from this demon's mouth. Understandably, still sobbing, screaming, and almost convulsing, his victim had to play the waiting game of being unclamped. Because they could only use their fists and feet to try freeing their colleague. These brave warriors feared it will only be a matter of a few seconds more that a third shipmate would perish. All of a sudden, just like out of a superhero movie, Christopher appeared to leap out of nowhere. Grasping onto his makeshift wooden spear, Olivia's savior speared her enemy right in its eye. Knowing it was going to die, all the others took their last jabs at this savage by kicking and punching it with pleasure. After a very short celebration, they all swam back to their nearby lifeboat. There, Christopher explained in great detail how he survived the whirlpool, then how he made it here to rejoin them. Just when they thought their biggest problem was over, everyone hoped the rest of this mission would go a little more smoothly. Still safe in the lifeboat, Michael had a theory that they were close to land because of his spotting of seagulls. Now, remembering what direction the birds were flying from the position of the moon, he used what is known as celestial navigation. After checking all his coordinates, this amateur astronomer was about to calculate his supposed new find. Once again, using only 2 broken wood boards, everyone would have to take turns rowing this overcapacity lifeboat. Seconds before Michael would have given the green light to get underway, this fearless captain looked back to take one last peek at the distant full moon to make sure they would be headed in the correct direction. As he glimpsed, he noticed a black wall slowly but surely rising from the ocean upwards, then eventually covering the moon, making the skyline darker and darker. Not really comprehending this potential phenomenon, he slipped into a stupor and paused for a moment while keeping silent. "Michael, is everything okay? You seem confused. Are we ready to go now?" Samantha pondered with a huge, perplexed look on her face, patiently searching for his response. "Yeah, Michael, we're all freezing. We should leave now." Olivia stressed, while also calmly looking for his reply. All the other passengers on board were also complaining and were also worried about Michael's judgment and if his leadership was still competent. After looking at everyone and hearing their complaints, he suddenly snapped his head back again at the blacked-out moon and realized a tidal wave was coming. "Hey, you all! A tidal wave is coming!" Michael wailed as he froze in horror. With only a few seconds to spare, all these helpless victims turned around, wide-mouthed, shocked, and silent, then boldly braced for impact. This rogue wave smashed this small, old, frail lifeboat into small remnants, almost like an encore performance of their first sinking. All these unfortunates were once again forced into the stormy ocean, but this time with more extreme, violent force. This tidal wave was so vehement, it actually sent everyone underwater in all different directions. This misfortunate leader was then knocked unconscious at the moment of impact. Luckily, all this time, the survivor was always floating on his back, with his face above water, so he could breathe. After floating for an hour, the waves guided this patient one to his theoretical destination. Chapter 2. Washed Ashore. It was 6 a.m. The sun was about to rise. The sky was half lit. Michael finally awoke from his unplanned nap. It was not clear if this brand new setting would give this castaway a better chance of hope. Still only semi-conscious, this suspected soul survivor was still extremely tired, for he was virtually tossed out of bed at midnight to abandon ship. Lying on this sandy white beach, he felt very sick due to the fact he barely survived and often had to roll on his side to puke. After only an hour of sleep, he woke up. Sitting on the beach, he started crying very loudly that became hysterical because he thought everyone else drowned. He thought it was all his fault and that he failed as a leader. A few minutes later, he started thinking to himself, because of this tragedy, will I even survive all by myself here on this island? If this is even an island, will anyone search for us? Will I go to prison for negligence, or even worse? Will my college application to Annapolis Naval College be denied? What will I tell my father about the sailboat? Hopefully, he won't be too mad, because material things can be replaced. Although, it was an heirloom, and he did treasure it very dearly. Oh no. What will I especially tell the parents of the missing children? I'm not even prepared for that at all. Wow. Maybe I'll just be safer running away from it all. Michael asked all these questions to himself silently, as he kept on worrying hopelessly. Again, very saddened and teary-eyed, this lost one asked many more unanswered questions to himself as he continued to pace this shore within a 20-yard perimeter. With the sunrise now in full view, this bright and warm morning started to dry off his cold, drenched clothes while he was still shivering. This victim of circumstance now had to think about his own survival. Resuming his walk, he just happened to glance into the ocean. There, something caught his eye. At first, he thought it was just a piece of female clothing. Upon further inspection, he realized it was Olivia from the clothes that she was already wearing. Seeing she was facing down, this brave lifesaver jumped into the water. Only having to swim about 30 yards out, this hero gently grabbed her shoulders, then turned her on her back. Olivia, can you hear me? Are you okay? Come on, Olivia, it's me, Michael. Please wake up. Are you conscious? Can you hear me? Michael whimpered as he remained cool, calm, and collective. Not receiving even the slightest response, this rescuer quickly began CPR by blowing a few quick breaths down his victim's mouth, while tilting her head back and squeezing her nose. Unfortunately, his first aid did not make an impact at all. Michael then gently put the top part of his arm of the elbow under her chin to keep her face above water so she could breathe. He then swam on his left side, using both legs in his left arm. Only taking about 30 seconds to reach the shore, he gently laid her on her back, then began CPR. Michael gently tilted her head back 45 degrees and blew 5 breaths into her mouth. Not responding, he put the heel of his right hand over the middle of her breastbone, then placed his left hand over his right hand, and gave her 30 chest compressions by pushing down on her middle chest 2 inches deep. Still not responding, he repeated this process again, but only gave her 2 breaths, then 30 compressions again. Coming back to life, Olivia coughed a little. Michael then turned her on her side, because he knew most likely she swallowed some water. She then heaved up some seawater. After this life-saving procedure, his victim hugged and thanked her hero. Oh wow. Thanks, Michael, for saving me again. You are truly a hero and a great leader to us all. By the way, where are we now, and where is everyone else? Did they all survive too? Olivia inquired peculiarly as she continued recovering from her near drowning. Well, I believe I arrived at this beach first, then a little later you showed up. So I guess it is only us 2 so far, Michael admitted as he resumed caring for Olivia. Oh, this is terrible. I just hope everybody else is okay. Do you think they'll arrive here soon unhurt? Olivia hoped as she awaited her wishful answer. Hopefully, Olivia. That has always been my desire, he added. Michael continued to embrace Olivia as they both sat down scanning this ocean's horizons for more survivors. After about 30 minutes of surveillance, Olivia's keen eyesight spotted 2 objects bobbing up and down in the distance. Thinking this was humorous, Olivia giggled, then pointed towards it so he could also enjoy this fun entertainment. Michael, look at those 2 things way out there just bouncing up and down in the water. Isn't that funny? Olivia giggled, thinking nothing of it. Where? Oh, yeah. I see it now. Sure funny. Michael grinned, also passing it off as irrelevant. Oh, that's Christopher and Isabella! Let's swim out there and rescue them! Olivia shrieked as she started to quiver. Wait, Olivia! Don't swim out there! You might drown! They seem to be conscious and drifting here. They should arrive any minute now. Michael cautioned as she detained her from swimming out. They both waited at the beach and observed them coming in. Christopher and Isabella paddled their feet for motion while using supply crates as flotation for their upper bodies. After reaching the shore, these two lucky ones ran over to Michael and Olivia and gave them long and tight embraces. We are so glad to see you two. Have you seen anyone else out there in the ocean? Michael questioned with somber. No, very unfortunately not. Christopher teared up as he feared the worst. Although the probability of survival is very low due to the cold water temperature, which could cause hypothermia, leading to unconsciousness, then death. Isabella acknowledged grimly. Yes, and perhaps they could have been consumed by carnivorous or omnivorous fish and mammals out there, Christopher added pessimistically. Oh, stop acting so negative, guys. All four of us survived the storm, so I think the others surely could also. Olivia lashed out to them, trying to stay positive. I'm sure they will come through. As a matter of fact, I'll bet they will be swimming here any minute now. Michael confided as he proudly took Olivia's side. Another hour had passed. These four discussed survival techniques by talking about what next steps they should take. Everyone's ideas were definitely taken into consideration. A little later, they all heard a commotion in the water. Oh my, is that one of our crew in the water? Looks like someone swimming, Christopher observed as he took yet another look just to confirm his sighting. Yes, I see that, Olivia confirmed as she also viewed them. Without actually going into the water, they all raced to the coastline to obviously get a closer look. Yes, that is definitely one of us. I believe it's Abigail, because she's swimming so fast, Michael chanted, for he was so glad more of them made it through. Yes, that is definitely her. Abigail has always been a great swimmer. She almost made it to the Olympics. Olivia cheered as she swam closer to shore. That is quite an incredible accomplishment, if I may add, Christopher praised while becoming much more impressed. Oh, I believe I see another person swimming right behind her. Could that be Ethan? Olivia proclaimed excitingly. Yes, that is him. It's great news. Everyone is almost here. Michael rejoiced because he felt confident everybody would make it here safely. More good news. I believe Samantha's just behind them. Olivia hooted for this continuously good fortune. This trio continued making their way to rejoin their peers. Ethan and Abigail resumed swimming while Samantha kept straggling on her makeshift surfboard and paddle, made from the sailboat's broken wooden boards. Once again, after making it to shore, this group embraced each other for a while, then discussed survival methods. Michael asked these three new arrivals if everything was fine, while checking them all over for any apparent injuries. This caretaker then suggested they all take a quick tour of this desolate land, not knowing if it was just a small isle or actually one of their 4 main Hawaiian islands. I would like us all to take a short walk around this place to make sure it is really an island or just a beach. Hopefully, it's part of a beach on one of the main islands to know we are safe. Michael confirmed as he led his group to search. That's a great idea, Michael. I will help guide us. Samantha agreed as she would help to direct from the back of the line. Perhaps we should navigate slowly and be very cautious of our surroundings, Christopher informed very precisely. But of course, this area is unknown to us. Hopefully, this odyssey will not change into a trek. Isabella worried that nothing would go wrong. We should all take sticks and stones with us, just in case there are wild beasts out there, Abigail recommended, for she had a premonition there could be ferocious beasts in this wooded area. This trip sounds okay to me, but I'm a little scared, so I will follow behind everyone. But don't worry, I won't struggle at all. Olivia cowered as she fell behind these searchers. So, these 7 brave explorers trekked through the land, unknown to them, while always carrying their primitive weapons for defense against this nature's adversaries. On the contrary, they were given the pleasure to observe brooks, tropical birds, exotic trees and plants, plus many more beautiful sights and sounds this natural scenic paradise had to offer. After circling back to the original starting point, Michael and Samantha quickly estimated that this was definitely an isle, which was only about a quarter mile in size. These bosses soon realized what had happened. Let out a huge sigh, then had to tell everyone the dreadful news. Everybody, please gather around. Samantha and I have very big news. Michael gasped as he hesitated to think about how to tell them the bad news. Yes, brace yourselves because it is going to be very difficult to accept. Samantha exhaled, for she hated what had happened. What is it, Michael? You and Samantha look so distressed. Olivia worried, not wanting to accept any more dreadful stories. Isabella and I pretty much already figured it out, but do go on, you two. Christopher assumed as he allowed Michael and Samantha to carry on. Okay, guys, the bad news is we are stranded on an isle. Michael blurted out with sadness and guilt. But don't worry, the good news is that there is a very good chance we will be rescued, and hopefully very soon. Samantha hoped, trying to keep smiling while hiding her uncertainty. But if not, we can devise a plan to build a raft and sail home instead. Michael optimized while changing his frown to a smile, hoping to make them all think favorably. So, everyone except the leaders grew so scared, nervous, and puzzled. After listening to all their negative inquiries and comments, Michael and Samantha had to call them to order. Okay, calm down. Don't anyone panic. We all must work as a team and think logically. Samantha soothed, trying to make everybody relaxed and rational. Michael then asked everyone to congregate where they first gathered around at the supply area. He designated this section as their official meeting place. He then gave his instructions for survival. We must build an SOS sign so ships and especially aircraft can see it so we all can be rescued. The pilots and shipmates will know exactly what to do if they spot it. How about if we get some branches and small fallen trees? We will then bring them out here on the sand and lay down a huge 30-foot-long SOS sign. We will also place rocks outside along the letters, then we will light the wooden letters on fire so they can see the sign. The rocks will prevent the burning ashes from flying away and burning us or starting a fire. The planes may see the SOS sign even if the fire burns out. Michael directed as they all listened very carefully. That's a great idea to light the SOS sign on fire so they can see it better. Samantha glowed, thinking that was an excellent concept. And perhaps we could use those burning letters as our fuel supply for other uses, such as drying, cooking, desalination, fighting off wild animals, etc. Christopher included very meticulously. Yes, those are definitely perfect examples, Isabella complimented with praise. So this plan was playing out perfectly. They all remained very obedient and worked as a team in synchronized order. Very fortunately for them, more equipment and crates filled with supplies from the sunken sailboat started to wash ashore near them. This was definitely a huge convenience. Finding a few bottles of flammable liquids worked well as fire starters, but only as temporary aids. When the wooden letters were almost burnt out, they would retrieve more wood for replacements. It was midday. All went as planned. Everyone seemed to be very content. The fuel system was mastered, so they had to work on their next project. Almost forgetting about fresh water and food, Michael and Samantha had to come up with their next big plan. With no manuals or instructional books about desalination, these two had a big problem remembering how this process of turning salt into drinking water by extracting the salt actually works. Michael tried his best to explain it to everyone. Now let me explain our next big mission. We have to make potable water from this Pacific Ocean saltwater. I believe I remember how to do this, but just give me a minute to recall. Michael bumbled, feeling embarrassed and unauthorized to finish this crucial task. Michael, if you may allow Isabella and me to demonstrate how this actually works, that would be very helpful. Christopher interrupted timely to certainly save this instructor from further humiliation. Please, Michael. Christopher and I demonstrated this phenomenon just last month at our science fair. Isabella contributed to Christopher's plea. Sure, you two go right ahead, Michael agreed, freeing himself from further aggravation. Very well. The process of desalination is separating the salt and dirt from seawater, turning it into fresh, potable water, which you can drink. Christopher explained very accurately. What we must do is get 2 metal containers, fill one with salt water, place a rubber or plastic tubular-shaped object on the top of both containers, then boil the salt water. Its steam will separate from the salt and impurities that will flow into the empty container, making it clean, drinkable water. It is such an easy process that we all can do. Christopher finished with such exactness. Okay, now I recall that procedure. Michael remembered, feeling a little ashamed. We will all start desalinating now, so we'll always have a plentiful supply of potable water. Samantha advocated because this would be a huge survival matter. This first day of survival grew older, but it was still early afternoon. The leaders had much more to teach to their students. So, without much further ado, they would teach them how to forage, meaning how to find food. Samantha thought it would be interesting to fish first, mostly because she always fishes with her dad. This fisherwoman was literally an expert on this subject. Michael suggested to Samantha he should take the boys fishing in the water, and she should catch shellfish with the girls on shore instead, because it will be much safer. Agreeing with him, she instructed the girls to find things from supplies such as nets, buckets, and other things that can be used to catch them. The boys took a much different approach by only carving wooden sticks into long spears to catch ocean fish. The girls made primitive nets from ripped pieces of screen and other items. These amateur female fishers then walked the beach to catch clams and oysters living close to the shore, while the boys actually went in the water spearing fish and lobsters. Okay, ladies, observe. I will teach you all how to catch clams. First of all, we pour a few ounces of water onto the wet, sandy part of the beach. It should make a small, thin opening. The clams then spit up the water and come to the surface. That is how we collect them in buckets. Samantha taught correctly. All her girls tried it and had so much fun. That good time was filled with smiles, jokes, and laughter. After gathering up all those clams, they collected a lot of oysters, which were only laying on the ocean's shallow waters floor. That task was so much easier. Meanwhile, the boys' venture were more risky and challenging, of course. They used their sharp wooden spears to hunt lobsters and fishes which were all a little further out. They sometimes had to dive into the ocean as deep as 20 feet, holding their breath on occasion. When this fun-filled experience concluded, all these happy foragers gathered around and started cooking. They made a primitive stove built from stone, using twigs and branches as fuel. They also found a few frying pans and knives from supplies. Samantha then instructed everyone how to cook clams and scallops. Okay, everyone, you first get a knife, cut in between its two shells, then pry them open. Next, cut the muscle at the back of the shell and scrape off all the meat and save it. That is the edible part. But you must also cut off the siphon and stomach, then discard them. You must then slice open the blanche and take the meat out. Rinse it, then cook it. The temperature should be at 375 degrees and cooked for about 15 minutes. Cleaning and cooking scallops are basically the same process as clams, but scallops have more gizzards to clean out. Samantha tutored to all her students' liking. Wow, great memory, Samantha. I already forgot how to do most of the catching, cleaning, and cooking of clams and scallops. Michael gloated as to admire her foraging skills. No problem, Michael. I've learned more of this from my dad than reading it from our survival manuals anyways. Samantha spoke humbly. Well, I must admit, all these fish look so appealing. I'm sure we'll all enjoy this buffet so much. Christopher complimented the chef with gratification. Oh, I'm sure we all will savor this feast. I will enjoy sampling a tiny portion of everything. Isabella also praised. Me too. I believe I will enjoy lobster the most. I do remember eating a lot of it with my family. Olivia thanked, while salivating over those crustaceans. Yeah, I just hope the seafood is high in protein but low in fat and calories, so I don't gain too much weight. Ethan worried as to be careful by taking small portions. Gee, all these fish look and smell so good. I was so tempted to try some, but I couldn't because I am a vegan. Abigail confessed, then went on to add, a pescatarian eats fish as their main food source, instead of meat and poultry. I think I'll go and search for fruits, plants, and berries. Does anyone want to join me? Abigail pondered, hoping for that slight chance. Yes, of course. I'll join you. I also have expertise on that subject. Samantha smiled as she couldn't wait to search. I will also join in. Olivia shone, for she was also excited. Do count me in, Abigail. I remember precisely where those food items should be. Isabella sparkled, but remembered to always stay professional with this crucial mission. So, while Michael and his men resumed preparing this fish dinner, all the ladies started their search for Abigail's vegan meals. They would also bring a lot of that food back also for everyone else's enjoyment. Taking the same utensils as when they went fishing, they arrived at the general area of the food. There seemed to be a never-ending supply. These lucky gals got the chance to explore this exotic isle again. Walking to a paradisal area where they viewed a stream, exotic birds, and wildflowers, they entered a field full of edible flora. Abigail did not eat any fish, of course, so she became slightly famished. She spotted beautiful, irresistible green plants with red, shiny berries. Running over to them, not thinking things out, she devoured quite a few of those berries. Oh no, Abigail! Spit them out right now! They're toxic! Samantha warned very harshly. Oops, too late! I already ate and swallowed them! Abigail distressed as she felt sick right away. Everyone rushed over to this ill victim to give her first aid. Samantha yelled at her to stick her right pointer and middle finger far into her mouth, then rub the back of her tongue for a few seconds to induce vomiting. Unfortunately, the first 2 tries did not work, but she succeeded after a couple more. Samantha then explained to Abigail that the rowan berries she just ate is edible, but has to be boiled first because its parasorbic acid can be toxic. All the girls then continued to pick these fruits, berries, plants, and nuts, forewarned not to eat any of these until they went back to boil them. They picked and collected primroses, dandelions, daisies, hawthorn, rowan berries, burdock, blackberries, pineapple weeds, crab apples, pine nuts, walnuts, and acorns. Of course, after having another great time collecting their vegetation, the fun ended. Arriving back, they had to boil all their food for quite a few minutes. This was quite the scrumptious little banquet they all hoped for. And, for dessert, they enjoyed the crab apples and nuts. Their delicious feast lasted a couple of hours. Soon after, Michael insisted they make primitive sleeping arrangements. It was getting a little dark. Michael and Samantha knew how to make temporary tents. They all made 2 of them. One was made from just a large tarp they found in storage, which was held up in the center with a tall branch. This tent was shaped like a teepee. The second tent was made out of branches for a frame. They used grass, leaves, and other branches to cover the frame. The tents were located near the SOS fire to help keep mosquitoes and other pests away. Also, in storage were objects of many types of fabric that they used, such as mattresses, pillows, and blankets. Everything seemed to be going well. They were all half asleep. Olivia then heard something creeping in the woods. Getting scared, she woke everyone up. "Oh no, I just heard something crawling in the woods over there. Did anyone hear it?" Olivia freaked out while needing the assistance of others. Everyone denied it. No one seemed to have heard the sounds Olivia had described to them. But Samantha decided to investigate these strange noises by having them all enter this frightful woods. Fully armed with rocks and sticks, some even lit the ends of their sticks on fire to use as temporary lanterns. It was still very dark, also with the aid of a few bright torches. Then, all of a sudden, they saw the silhouette of a creature. With a few loud screams from the girls, they ran to attack this dark, shadowy beast. Defensively and aggressively, they hit, kicked, threw rocks, and whacked it with their sticks. After a few seconds of this assault, this hurt being screamed. Michael knew this was not an animal, but a human instead. Of course, he ordered these warriors to halt the attack. He then put his lantern next to the person's face. Being very confused and not recognizing this person at all, the rest of these onlookers kept staring in silence for many seconds. Suddenly, changing from shock to surprise, Olivia screamed, "It's Matthew!" Following in sequence, the rest burst out in awe, waiting to hug him while bawling. "I thought it was you guys, but I wasn't too sure. I just woke up because I was so tired after the shipwreck. So, I guess I was the first to arrive on this isle. I also had to hide when I slept for safety reasons. I then heard you all getting ready to sleep when I started to wake up. Not being too sure it was you guys, I had to sneak up for a better look." Matthew elaborated in great detail. "So sorry that we all attacked you with our weapons." Samantha apologized profusely. "Yes, we thought you could have been a nocturnal carnivorous predator," Christopher woefully mentioned. "Or perhaps a night stalker and voyeuristic juvenile kidnapper." Isabella defended them for their vicious actions. "I felt my adrenaline flowing, so I almost had to wrestle you to the ground." Abigail clarified her nearly intended action. "I also felt confident enough to help Abigail to pin you with a wrestling move if needed." Ethan asserted to help his mate. "Well, I always had that good vibe you were all harmless, even if you were to be an animal, Matthew." Olivia felt while smiling at her found partner. "Oh, well, I always knew you were so sweet anyways, Olivia." Matthew laughed as everyone else joined in. Hey, so, Matthew, how did you end up surviving after getting sucked through the hole in the boat? We all want to know. Michael pried, trying to get the answer out of him. It was so terrifying. I guess it was all luck. After I plunged through the hole, I grabbed onto a floating piece of broken wood. As luck was on my side, the stormy waves then pushed me towards this isle. Matthew illustrated with delight. Wow, that's great. We're all so glad you survived it. Olivia boasted very happily. But the rest of us were not as lucky as you were. We had to survive a sinking boat, a shark attack, and then a rogue wave, Samantha revealed very morbidly. That's a story for another day. We will fill you in with all the details some other time, Matthew. But for now, let's all go to sleep. We will have a very busy day tomorrow for sure, Michael pointed out. They were all finally reunited again since that dreadful shipwreck. This first horrific day of being in the water, then stranded on a deserted isle, has finally concluded. Will these marooned victims survive the next day? What perils and obstacles will they endeavor in their future? This has been Juvenile Washed Ashore. Written by John Harrington. Narrated by Lance McDonald. Copyright 2019 by John Harrington. Production copyright by John Harrington.
Audible hopes you have enjoyed this program.